Hello dear friends. All the pieces of information are falling into place. Opinion piece. It starts in China. It would be the trigger for a global crash. Evergrande is on the verge of bankruptcy. Has 1,300 projects in more than 280 cities. Alert in China over Evergrande Group's collapse. It is the second largest Chinese real estate developer. Investors brace for a downturn in China. Evergrande suspends trading of old bonds. Evergrande's bankruptcy could be the first dominoes. Evergrande contagion spreads to other firms. Australia blocks French submarine program. More than 10,000 migrants slept under Texas bridge. There are 61 container ships waiting off California. World Economic Forum 2022 to be held in Davos in January. Kamala Harris says start shopping for Christmas gifts. Taiwan plans $9 billion increase in arms spending. US acknowledges Kabul drone strike killed 10 civilians. Wall Street closes roller coaster week sharply lower. World economy could grow 5.3%, highest rate in 50 years. Robots take on more jobs as workers age. Renault to cut 2,000 jobs in France as it switches to electric cars. Earthquakes is on La Palma Island as volcano alert continues. Let's start. We are all, though the dance was about, we all thought the dance was about to begin in Gringolandia. With the Wall Street bull out of his pedestal and going left and right, but it seems that divine providence has reserved that role for China as the possible trigger for the global crash, as the first domino to be followed by all the others, following the news that is coming in, although nothing is certain. China is a giant with feet of clay because of its totalitarian system against its own citizens. It follows that strength is born from freedom and not dictatorship. The more you seek to control the people, the more you weaken the system. A certain natural level of chaos is part of nature alive, and all totalitarian attempts to create a perfect world, as if it were a military barracks, always fail, because people need to breathe freely. The forced collapse is upon us. The time has come for a new economy to emerge, and emerge it will. What appears to be a collapse is nothing more than rebuilding a financial system from scratch. This is how you make a world great again. Kamala Harris told people to start shopping for Christmas gifts. Fox News contributor Leo Terrell expressed concern that Democrats intend to shut down the economy again after Vice President advised shoppers to consider buying Christmas gifts now because of global supply chain problems. Terrell says it appears the Vice President expects more economic blockades. Crash predicted. Investors brace for a big fall in China. International investors who have been piling into China in recent years are now bracing for one of their biggest falls as problems at over-indebted property giant Evergrande Group come to a head. Evergrande Group, or Evergrande Real Estate Group, formerly known as Henda Group, is a Guangzhou-based company in southern Guangdong province, China. Evergrande is the second largest real estate developer by sales in the country and sells apartments mostly to customers with medium to high purchasing power. In October 2009, the company raised $722 million in an initial public offering on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. In 2010, it acquired the Guangzhou Evergrande Social Club. Dwindling resources in the face of $305 billion in liabilities have wiped nearly 80% of its stock and bond prices, with an $80 million bond coupon payment looming next week. Bankers have said that it will most likely miss the payment and go into a kind of suspended animation where the authorities intervene and sell some of its assets. The bigger picture is that if Evergrande, which has more than 1,300 real estate projects in more than 280 cities, collapses, it will dispel the notion that some Chinese companies are too big to fail. The magnitude of the losses investors will face remains to be seen. In April, Evergrande bonds were trading around 90 cents to the dollar. Now they are closer to 25 cents. Major financial firms, including BlackRock and Goldman, and companies such as Blackstone, will meet with officials from China's central bank and its banking and securities regulators. Liquidity crisis. The liquidity crisis that has hit China's real estate giant Evergrande Group is giving rise to concerns about the beginning of the bursting of a property bubble in China that could translate into repercussions from the Asian country's financial system. The Hong Kong listed company is China's most indebted real estate firm. It has liabilities totaling more than $3,000 billion, affecting more than 250 banks and non-banks after several years of borrowing to finance rapid growth. In the first days of this month, some of its creditors demanded the immediate repayment of the money. On Monday, multiple investors rallied outside the company's Shenzhen headquarters to demand repayment of their loans to Evergrande. Last week, Chinese regulators gave the green light to Evergrande's negotiations with banks and other large creditors. This could be a good sign for investors, as the negotiations would buy time for an orderly breakup of Evergrande, as opposed to an anarchic bankruptcy in a country with few precedents for large bankruptcies. Prominent investors such as Michael Burry and Jeremy Grantham are preparing for a devastating financial collapse, and they are not alone in warning for some time about the effects of rampant speculation fueled by government stimulus programs that cannot sustain the spike in asset prices forever. Billionaire investors Leon Cooperman, Stanley Druckenmiller, or Jeffrey Gandalach have also been sounding the alarm for some time now. So have Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, market prophet Gary Shilling, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. The war on cash is real. In our strange economy, we hear a lot of things and constantly have ideas thrown at us. It all tends to flow together and helps us develop a strategy on how we should cope with the changing times. One thing we keep hearing is that the war is being waged to eliminate cash. Not only do most people agree with this, but many have embraced the idea. Repercussion. Evergrande suspends trading on all bonds. China's largest and most consistently important real estate developer, Evergrande Group, collapsed on the 13th anniversary of Lehman's bankruptcy filing, when Beijing told Evergrande's creditor banks that the insolvent company would not pay interest on its debt next week, nor repay principal, in effect blessing the upcoming default. Angry Evergrande investors go berserk, hold management hostage at company offices. As Evergrande's collapse reverberates throughout the Chinese economy, angry retail investors have gone from storming the company's headquarters to taking management hostage. Evergrande offers discounted apartments to bankrupt investors. In an effort to appease its angry stakeholders, Evergrande plans to allow consumers and staff to bid on discounted properties to pay them billions in overdue investment products. It is what's called a payout in kind. Beijing creates new securities regulator to fight fraud. With real estate giant Evergrande in bankruptcy, finally on the verge of its Lehman Brothers moment, President Xi Jinping and the Politburo's campaign has finally reached a reform of China's financial markets, as foreign bids have been banned during the crackdown. World Bank. Kristalina Georgieva, pressured World Bank staff to favor China. World Bank leaders, including then Executive Director Kristalina Georgieva, applied undue pressure on staff to boost China's ranking in the bank's Doing Business 2018 report, according to an independent investigation released Thursday. IMF chief denies altering World Bank report to appease China. IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva on Thursday rejected an independent investigation that found that in her previous job at the World Bank, she pressured staff to alter a report to favor China. World Bank to stop doing business reports after finding irregularities. The World Bank announced it will suspend doing its annual reports on the ease of doing business in various countries because it discovered problems in data contained in the 2018 and 2020 deliverables. World economy forecast to grow by 5.3%, highest rate in 50 years. The world economy would grow by 5.3% in 2021, the most dynamic rate in almost 50 years, according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development Report 2021. World Economic Forum 2022 to be held in Davos in January on face-to-face basis. The World Economic Forum 2022 will be held in the Swiss city of Davos from January 17 to 21 on a face-to-face basis, the event's organizers reported. The IMF continues to negotiate with Argentina. The spokesman for the International Monetary Fund, Jerry Rice, informed that the organization is continuing talks with the Argentine government of Alberto Fernandez with the intention of reaching an agreement in relation to the $44 billion loan granted to the South American nation. Taiwan plans $9 billion increase in arms spending. Taiwan on Thursday proposed an additional $8.69 billion in defense spending over the next 5 years, including new missiles, as it warned of an urgent need to upgrade weapons in the face of a severe threat from its giant neighbor. Taiwan says island is sea fortress blocking Chinese expansion. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu told an online forum on Wednesday that Taiwan is a sea fortress blocking Chinese expansion in the region. China enters Taiwan air defense zone a day after military budget increase. Taiwan's Air Force rushed Friday to one of 10 Chinese aircraft that entered its air defense zone, a day after the island announced increased military spending to counter the threat. Pact against China. Beijing is furious over the next defense pact, following Wednesday night's major announcement by President Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson that unveiled a new strategic security partnership between the three countries focused on defense technology sharing, in particular that will allow Australia to develop nuclear submarines. Australian uranium stocks soared after Australia decides it wants the nuclear industry to go with new nuclear submarines, following the landmark deal which pitted the US and UK against China, in the process of supplying nuclear-powered submarines. France. Australia blocks French submarine program. Knives are flying between France and Australia after the abrupt cancellation of Australia's nearly €56 billion French-made submarine program. It came just after the announcement of the defense pact with the US and the United Kingdom. The French foreign minister has described the incident as a stab in the back. China and France denounce US nuclear pact with Britain and Australia. China on Thursday denounced a new Indo-Pacific security alliance between the US and UK and Australia, saying such partnerships shouldn't target third countries and warning of an intensifying arms race in the region. France recalls its ambassadors to the US and Australia for consultations. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian announced Friday that France has recalled its ambassadors to the US and Australia for consultations following the announcement of the creation of the Security Alliance. Renault to cut 2,000 jobs in France as it switches to electric cars. French automaker Renault said Thursday it would cut up to 2,000 engineering and support jobs in France as it switches to electric cars. France suspends 3,000 healthcare staff. Hospital, nursing homes, and health centers suspended about 3,000 workers in France for failing to meet the mandatory guideline. Markets. Wall Street closes roller coaster week sharply lower. Stocks closed sharply lower on a broad wave of selling on Friday, ending a week hit by solid economic data, concerns about corporate tax hikes, and possible changes to the Fed's timetable for phasing out asset purchases. The Spanish stock market rises 0.31% and approaches 8,800 points. The Spanish stock market achieved gains of 0.31% on Friday, supported by large stocks and the tourism sector in a session conditioned by losses in most international markets. Retail sales surprised to the upside in a strong boost to the economy. Retail sales unexpectedly rose in August, probably boosted by back-to-school shopping and government child tax credit payments, which could temper expectation of sharp slowdown in economic growth in the third quarter. Dollar dominates after retail sales boost. The dollar held near 3-week highs against the basket of major currencies on Friday after a string of strong economic data rekindled expectations of earlier monetary policy tightening by the Federal Reserve. Canadian dollar hits 4-week low as election jitters mount. The Canadian dollar weakened against its U.S. counterpart on Friday as commodity prices fell and investors adjusted their positions ahead of the federal election, with the currency losing ground for a second week. Possible insider trading. U.S. officials are examining possible insider trading and market manipulation at global cryptocurrency exchange Binance. Banking lobbyists opposed tax reporting bill. The largest banking lobbyists joined together Friday to make another effort to quash a proposed bank account reporting bill being drafted as part of Congress' reconciliation package. Gold crisis. Gold set for second weekly loss. Gold prices were set for a second weekly loss as a firmer dollar had the metals appealed to holders of other currencies. As investors await a key Federal Reserve meeting for clues on how soon the central bank will begin reducing stimulus. And gold is going crazy as dollar and bond yields rise. Better than expected retail sales data and worse than expected labor market data have triggered some significant moves out of stocks. The dollar is rising, marking higher stops from last week. Gold slips after 0.7% rise in retail sales. Gold prices trade near session lows as consumers spent more money than expected in August, easing concerns that it is losing momentum in the economic recovery. Inflation. Inflation target could met by 2025. European Central Bank chief economist Philip Lane revealed in a private meeting with German economists that the ECB expects to meet its 2% inflation target by 2025, the Financial Times said Thursday. Powell ordered Fed ethics review after trading by officials. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell ordered a comprehensive review of ethics rules governing financial holdings and transactions by senior central bank officials. Robots take on more jobs as workers age. It turns out that robots are taking on jobs faster around the world in places where their human counterparts are aging faster. Military news. Pentagon criticizes slow modernization of its army. Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General John Hyten noted that Washington has been extremely slow to to act militarily in competitive conditions with Moscow and Beijing because of bureaucracy and fear of risk. A report denounces that technology giants profit from wars by selling private data to the US Army and the government. Companies in these sectors received more than $44 billion since 2004 for collaborating with agencies involved in the so-called War on Terror. The report, called Big Tech Sells the War, reveals information on the sale of personal data to the army and the government. 3 former officials admit to providing hacking technology to the United Arab Emirates. 3 former military and intelligence officials agreed to pay $1.7 million to the government and admitted to providing hacking technology to the United Arab Emirates, the Justice Department announced Tuesday. Migration crisis. More than 10,000 migrants sleep under Texas bridge. Haitians make up the bulk of more than 10,000 migrants sleeping on the ground and desperate for food in a squalid camp under a bridge in South Texas on Friday, in a growing humanitarian and political challenge to the U.S. Thousands of migrants converge under Texas bridge. Thousands of migrants have converged under a bridge connecting the Texas River and Mexico's city Acuna, creating a makeshift camp with few basic services and intense heat in the latest border emergency. Texas governor closes border crossings with Mexico. Texas Governor Greg Abbott closed 6 ports of entry with Mexico over a surge of illegal migrants attempting to cross in recent months. Supply blockade. There are 61 container ships waiting off California. The number of container ships at anchor or drifting in San Pedro Bay off the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach has surpassed all previous records and is increasing by the day. There are 61 container vessels, an all-time high, queued in San Pedro Bay. Of those, a record 21 were forced to move because the anchorages were occupied. Citizens are very angry. A new CNN poll finds that 74% of adults now say they are very or somewhat angry, in quotes, about the way things are going in the US, which includes 88% of Republicans, 70% of independents, and even 67% of Democrats. Those numbers are crazy. Just a few months ago, there was a lot of optimism, but now the mood of the nation has completely changed. Entrepreneur who cut his salary to share it among his employees shows his model works and urges others to do the same. 6 years after Gravity Payments founder and CEO Dan Price cut his own salary to increase that of his employees, he now shows the excellent results he has achieved and urges other entrepreneurs to follow in his footsteps. Afghanistan. US acknowledges drone strike in Kabul killed 10 civilians. A drone strike in Kabul last month killed 10 civilians, including 7 children. The military says Friday, apologizing for what it said was a tragic mistake. Afghanistan will continue to be denied access to the IMF funds until the government's situation is clarified. The International Monetary Fund is suspending its program with Afghanistan due to a lack of clarity on the international recognition of the Afghan government, said IMF spokesman Jerry Rice. Taliban banned women from entering Women's Affairs Ministry. Taliban representatives on Thursday banned female employees from entering the Women's Affairs Ministry in Kabul, allowing only men to enter the building. Taliban create Ministry of Virtue and Vice. Instead of a Ministry of Women's Affairs, Kabul now offers ministries of prayer and guidance and promotion of virtue and prevention of vice. New posters read. Spain. Spaniards in Australia cannot leave the country. A group of Spaniards who are residing in Australia have written a letter to the Foreign Ministry explaining that they are confined in the country and that the newborns do not have passports to travel because they are not registered. Earthquakes in plural is on La Palma as volcano alert remains. An increase in seismic activity on the Spanish Canary island of La Palma slows, but could return at any time. Will magma and tremors activate La Palma volcano? We have 21,000 recorded earthquakes. The volcanoes of the island are still active and the Cumbre Vieja volcano may erupt. The seismic activity has been incessant until the night of September 16-17, similar to a truss. In the subsoil, the magma pressure has raised the ground up to 10 centimeters. The geological process is inherent to the volcanic origin of the archipelago, which is stable. There is evidence of seismic activity at the depth of 1 kilometer or less, activity that continues to migrate to the northwest at a depth of about 8 kilometers. Earthquakes recorded at shallow depths between 1 and 5 kilometers now number about 50. Earthquakes are occurring at increasingly shallower depths, the latest at about 5 kilometers, and it is estimated that the maximum vertical deformation of the terrain has already reached 10 centimeters. In other words, the magma is rising and rising strongly. Possible volcanic eruption on the Canary island of La Palma after a seismic swarm of 4,222 tremors. Officials on the Spanish island of La Palma have warned of a potential volcanic eruption after the country's National Geographic Institute detected a seismic swarm of 4,222 tremors near Teneguía volcano. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.